Welcome to EnVision Center News, where we discuss community impact and involvement with today's nonprofit leaders and philanthropists.
Ladies, hello and welcome. I am thrilled to have you on the podcast to talk about all things Waldorf. But before we get into the details, can you each introduce yourself and a little bit of your background, your history, and maybe a little bit of what led you to this position or this line of work or this interest in Waldorf?
Well, I've been with this Waldorf school since 1999, so I'm the old timer at the school. And before that, I was at the Waldorf School in the Roaring Fork. And what led me to Waldorf education was being an education major in college long ago, and not feeling didn't resonate with what I saw in the public schools when I volunteered in the public schools while I was getting my degree of a lot of worksheets and a lot of feeling like, well, that's not the whole child. And Waldorf education, I ended up having a Waldorf graduate as my roommate in college, and I did a paper on Waldorf education and thought, that's the education I want, something that really looks at the whole child, as we call it, head, heart, and hands, just really wanting to not see them as just vessels to pour knowledge into, but beings to become.
Mm-hmm. And how were you educated?
I went to public school.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay,
it wasn't anything in my background before, but just from my own experience growing up and being hungry for art and drama and singing and all of that and not getting that in my public school.
Yeah. And what is it that you do specifically?
Oh, yes. I'm the pedagogical director now, but in Waldorf education, the teachers ideally move with their class 1st through 8th grade. So I took 2 classes through at this school, meaning I started in 1st grade and graduated them in 8th grade. And then I became the pedagogical director. And that really means that I do a little bit of everything, but I help provide guidance. I'm there for the teachers and the parents and the kids. And someone likened it to being the darner.
Okay. Okay. And do you like that, or do you miss having the class?
I still get to interact with the children. I teach gardening at the school still, and I hold a summer camp. So I get my time with the children. And so I love it. I get to do a lot of everything.
Okay, great. And Amy, what about you?
Yeah, my name is Amy Dailey, and I am pretty new to Waldorf education. I'm the 1st grade teacher, so I've just started a grades journey with my class. And I worked at one Waldorf school in Oregon, in Eugene, as a subject teacher. And I found my way to Waldorf also through a Waldorf student, and just being kind of impressed by this human being that was a Waldorf graduate. And I think after seeing how they approach the world and having a friendship, just being curious about how him and his siblings became the way that they were. And during the pandemic, I was making a career shift. I was working in summer camp administration, and summer camps were closed. So I needed to make a career shift, and there was this kind of knocking, saying what about that Waldorf thing that you've always been curious about? And I went to teacher training, and they sent me to Sandpoint for a month to do a practicum within a classroom. And so I was here with the kindergarten and fell in love with the school. It's just a very healthy, robust school and an amazing community. So when there was an opportunity here, I came for the school. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And so you've both been at different Waldorf schools. I guess can parents expect the same thing for their student, no matter what do all Waldorf schools going to have in common, and where might they differentiate where you walk and you're like, oh, I'm a little surprised. The old school we went to did it this way, and this school does it that way.
Yeah.
I would say there's a curriculum map that all Waldorf schools follow and a philosophy that they all follow. We're not a religious school, but we believe in spirituality and in terms of honoring that there's that of the spirit in everyone, and that children come to us and we want to honor what's the spirit of this child and what are they becoming. And I would say that's unique to all Waldorf schools. Also, what would be unique is an artistic approach to education, realizing that artistry, creativity is an innate human ability, and that we want to foster that in children, and that's part of how they discover who they are, and it's part of how they are intrigued and become interested in whatever they're studying. So they make their own books, they illustrate their own books, they write about them, and so it's all what they took in from what the teacher brought them is what they put out on the pages. So all of that, giving them that a chance for artistic expression, whether it's singing or art, drawing or drama. There's just so many ways to have that artistry come forth. And so I would say that's something you're going to see in every Waldorf school. What would be different is every teacher brings their own being into the class. And because they're going with the class 1st through 8th grade, or in the early childhood, they follow them through the number of years that they're in kindergarten or in pre-kindergarten. But the unique gifts that teacher has to bring are what's going to be living in that classroom. So there's that unique imprint in each Waldorf school of the teacher and the culture that you're in. I mean, there are Waldorf schools. There's about 1,500 Waldorf schools worldwide, and they're now in places like China and places in Africa and South America. So each of those hopefully is taking on the cultural aspects of where they're at, so that it's not just a Eurocentric model, even though it started in Germany.
Yeah, I think one kind of difference in the way a Waldorf school operates or the way a Waldorf teacher approaches education is that, like, the child is the curriculum. You know, Waldorf 1st grade is going to look the same as another Waldorf 1st grade. And even families at our school that have 4 children that attend the school all have 4 very different experiences in their 4 classes, like Julie said, based a lot on the teacher, but also this group of children that are coming together to do this work. And so, I mean, each day, my lessons, I'm bringing experiences to the children that I am intuiting and knowing that will meet them where they are. This particular group that loves these particular things or has these particular challenges. And I think that's a unique aspect of being with them for 8 years, is you have this real depth of relationship that starts to form, so that the teacher knows what to bring.
And how do you manage that though with a classroom? Like, I feel like it'd be one thing if you were homeschooling and you had 1 or 2 children that you were treating as the curriculum, but if you have a classroom full, once it even gets past 2, I would feel like it would start to get like, okay, well, what if child A and child B are wildly different in their interests? How do you manage that as a teacher?
I mean, it's just true. They are wildly different.
Yeah.
I have a class of 17, and I think managing it comes from like intimacy with the child and their family, which I think is an interesting way to frame it. But I mean, I started my journey with a home visit with each of the families, entering into their home and seeing like, what is the environment that informs them and what is near and dear to them, and how can I form a loving relationship with them so that they view me as a loving authority. And then the children have this ability to kind of wait when we're bringing something that is a challenge for this one child. They can kind of sense like, oh, I'm going to have to just wait while this child takes a little bit longer to figure out this skill. And then I thrive at this other skill. So I think it's a matter of like just a social working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'd say that's the beauty of it, too, having homeschooled for 1 year my daughter. After that, I thought, she needs other people. That's what she needs around her to make the educational experience richer, because there's that sense in which they rub elbows, they rub each other and kind of rub off the raw edges and learn from each other. And just the things you can do as a teacher when you have a whole class, the circle games you can play, the music you can create, the activities you can do that become richer because you can do them with different abilities or different aspects of personality that come out. So to me, there's a lot of education that happens because you have a group of children and they learn from each other. And they may not feel like doing it, but their classmates are going to go, yeah, you can do it. Or,
yeah.
And I would say my experience in the classrooms is you said they'll recognize the challenges in each other and they'll cheer each other on. When they suddenly see, oh, you got it, they want to celebrate that. So.
Yeah. And then practically management, it's just like loving firm boundaries in the moment where there's this challenge that I don't want to do, or I've done this so many times, it's easy for me. Just, this is what we're doing, or, we're trying, we're going to give it a try. Just this, I'm holding love within myself, but I'm firm. This is what we're doing. This is the challenge for today.
In our early childhood program, there's very much, it's a play-based program in kindergarten. We don't really start to actively teach the letters and the numbers until first grade, because we realize what children at the younger age really need to get into their bodies. They need to learn their social skills. There's so much learning that goes on by them playing with one another. And yes, the teacher's bringing stories and songs and verses and things that feed a rich linguistic background into them that'll come forth into first grade. But that sense that there's very much a rhythm. So they prepare a snack each day, and oatmeal day is one day, and they know it. And the parents go, how do you get them to eat oatmeal? I can't get them to eat oatmeal at home. But it's all the kids are eating oatmeal, and suddenly it's the thing that they helped make. And so they're all doing it. So there is that beauty of where they'll push themselves a little further when there's a group around them.
And there's ritual created around it as well. That helps.
So one of the, I guess you could call it a benefit, or maybe it's not a benefit in your eyes of public school, and trust me, I'm not a huge fan of public school, but is that you get a new teacher every year. So if you didn't get along with the teacher, you didn't like that teacher, okay, it's on to the next. What if that happens within this system and it's like, oh, I'm stuck with the same teacher for 8 years or whatever?
We get that question a lot, and I would say that's the work of the community of the teachers, too, is to help each other as teachers grow. And yes, conflict happens, and we realize that conflict is something to grow from. And so if there is a challenge point, that's part of where my position comes in, too, is to go, okay, we need to have a meeting together with the parents and the teacher and to look at where are the growth edges, where can we shift things, what are the actual needs of this child. And we have an educational support teacher who looks at very much at the lens of how is the child in their physical body first, and are there physical hindrances that are keeping them from learning? So if they're having challenges reading and then they're acting out in the classroom, well, let's look back further. Maybe the challenge in reading is because they never fully integrated what would be called early movement patterns, like if they never crawled, or they haven't resolved this midline here that is there, like when you see a young child, they do everything on one side or the other. They don't cross this midline yet. That's a development.
Color with a crayon, and then come here and color.
They can't cross it yet, but that's a developmental milestone, which is why we delay reading until first grade. And the instruction, because they haven't resolved this midline yet, and that's referencing to where does that midline between the two hemispheres of the brain also become more, that there's more crossover between it. So all of that being said, our educational support teacher will look at that and say, oh, well, let's do some exercises that get you crossing that midline. And we teach knitting in first grade, in part because the children love to create things, but they don't realize it that with every stitch they're taking, when they cross the thread over and take a stitch, they're crossing that midline. So you're helping through movement, help them resolve some things that might be physical hindrances that are making it an impediment to learning to read, say, or other things. So looking at through things at that lens, if there is an issue where a child is not happy or parents are feeling they're not learning to read yet, or whatever the conflict is, we want to resolve it, hopefully at its roots, and then move forward. We also have many other teachers that work with the children in a given day. We have our specialty programs. So the handwork teacher comes in and teaches knitting, and we teach Spanish and Japanese in blocks. So they're getting a Spanish and Japanese teacher. And I think that's it for first grade. That's the only ones. But then as they go into the upper grades, they're also going to have a movement teacher, which would be likened to PE, but very much with the sense of what are they developmentally ready for. We don't teach a lot of competitive movement in the younger grades because they're not ready for competition yet. They just need to do more cooperative games. But in the upper grades, he's going to be teaching basketball and volleyball and those more standard sports. And then we have a music teacher, and then starting in fourth grade, they get on a stringed instrument. So every day is filled with other teachers as well.
Okay.
And woodworking eventually.
And woodworking, yes. In fifth grade, they start woodworking. So that richness of many other people's gifts to give to them, which also can help that sense of that would be hard to be with one teacher for 7 hours a day, 8 years. It's not quite the picture. So
I think for me as a class teacher too, starting this journey and planting this seed with my class parents, like building this foundation that we're mirrors for each other and the work that we have to do together in life, like soul work as well. In the alumni panel that I went to recently, hearing some of the teens and even business owners in Sandpoint that are graduates from our school, one of the gems that I really took away was one of them sharing what sets me apart as a person, and I attribute it to Waldorf education, is that I don't burn bridges, that I know how to do the work in relationship. And I think there are lots of parts of our education and our curriculum that really help with that social working, like our class plays that the children do every year together. It's just this chance where you do rub edges and grow from it, learn from each other.
I feel like since COVID, I mean, these kind of alternative education philosophies have existed for a long time, but since COVID and people being exposed to what's going on in the school more, and there being more people homeschooling and just seeking alternative education, that there's been a lot more conversation about all the alternatives like Montessori and Waldorf and Charlotte Mason. Can you kind of talk about how Waldorf is maybe similar to some of those and different than Montessori or different than Charlotte Mason, like kind of the Venn diagram of all these different kind of alternative philosophies?
Yeah, we often get the question most with Montessori comparison. And I would say the similarity is that Montessori also wants to look at the whole child and what do they need. It's not just about, it's just book learning. But I would say a big difference is Montessori, from what I know of it, is more project-oriented and a child, following what the child is interested in and then giving them those, let's say it was a science project or something that's almost that they're following their individual lead. Whereas our work is much more social, that you're teaching the whole class and you're working with the whole class. And yes, you're meeting the individual child's needs, but they're all working on that book together that they're creating or learning to draw something or learning their letters. And it becomes very much more of a communal activity than my experience of Montessori is.
I think it's interesting, Maria Montessori and Rudolf Steiner they're both the founders of the two pedagogies. They came out of the same era and both in Europe, post World War I. And I think that for Waldorf education, something that's a little different about it is that it was founded really with the intention of social renewal, of bringing healing to a place that was in shambles after war and after so much division. And Emil Molt, the owner of the Waldorf Astoria cigarette factory, coming to Rudolf Steiner and asking him a question, how can we bring healing to the people and how can we offer education to the children that will ripple out forward and continue to heal our humanness socially.
Yeah. It seems like there's a lot of overlap between people who do kind of the Charlotte Mason method in Waldorf. I know a lot of people that kind of fuse the two, or I've even heard of schools that sort of, they maybe call themselves a Waldorf school, but they also do Charlotte Mason. They also, love Charlotte Mason and sort of ascribe to that. But then the overlap I see between Montessori and Waldorf is like me as a mom with little kids. Like if I get on Etsy and I search for like natural toys, they're always like Waldorf / Montessori. Like because they're trying
wooden toys.
They're trying to capture both, populations that are interested in both things. And so that's why I was kind of curious as to like, well, they have toys in common apparently, or at least a lot of people seem to think sellers on Etsy seem to think so, but I wasn't sure what the other like hardline differences were.
What is Charlotte Mason? I'm not familiar with it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, okay. So Charlotte Mason, she also believes that it's all about the whole child, and also doesn't really start formal education until the child is 6, and it's all play before then and a lot of reading. She's all about read, like you reading to the children, and that should actually be part of their, like that should be ongoing for as long as you can hang on to it, I guess, until the kid's like, no, I just want to read on my own, which they're encouraged to read on their own too, but there's always this kind of like group reading that happens as well. And to be honest, I'm not sure where the hard lines are between Charlotte Mason and Waldorf. I think she was a little bit more like openly Christian, like, and that was, so there's a bit more of that there as instead of sort of a agnostic spiritual component to it. But yeah, I'm just learning about these things too, so I'm not really sure. I've just noticed that there seems to be more overlap between Charlotte Mason and Waldorf than Montessori and Charlotte Mason. If that
makes me
sense.
curious. I'd like to look into it more.
Yeah. So came out of, she taught in a public school and actually never had any children of her own. I don't even know if she ever got married, but like her life was educating children. And so I'm not sure which came first, Waldorf or Charlotte Mason, because I can't remember what time period she was.
Yeah, and Waldorf's education got started in 1919, so right after World War I. So,
yeah, Charlotte Mason was might have been a little before that. I'm not sure. She might have been before.
Wow.
And she kind of disappeared from the public square, I believe, and then sort of got revived somewhat recently. Like in the past 20 years or so, she sort of like, there's been like a Charlotte Mason revival kind of thing happening, and now there's like Charlotte Mason Institute and all this stuff. I don't know. I'm just trudging through it myself, but Charlotte Mason is somebody that I've certainly been drawn to for similar reasons that I think people are drawn to Waldorf. Like there's just a lot of similarities there.
Yeah, I see similarities in like this gesture of guardianship of childhood and protecting like what we call the kingdom of childhood. I mean, keeping them young and, like Julie said, in their bodies, integrating their bodies rather than sitting still and looking, whether it be media that's on a screen or printed media. And of course, we love children to have books. I read a book to my class today, but the majority of our story in the Waldorf School comes through oral tradition, oral storytelling, and each grade there's a particular kind of flavor of story that we have found, or that Rudolf Steiner indicated, that meets the child where they are developmentally and soul-wise. So like in first grade, it is the fairy tales and the classic traditional Russian fairy tales, Grimm's fairy tales, even Japanese fairy tales they're hearing. And then as you move up through the grades, it'll shift. Second grade, fables and stories of the saints. And third grade will bring those Hebrew stories in the Old Testament. And fourth grade, Norse mythology. And then fifth grade, it starts to sort of shift from this myth into more history, talking about ancient Greece and Rome and ancient India, and then into the upper grades, more into our current history. I mean, the history of our wars and exploration, and then up to current day in eighth grade, revolutions.
Yeah. Well, and that's a really important part that I forgot to mention about Charlotte Mason, is that she really emphasized narration and being able, so like that's what you're doing with the children, is you're reading them a book and then, or a chapter or whatever, not the full book, obviously, if it's a chapter book, probably not in one sitting, and then you would have the child recite back to, like, tell me something about that story. And so that's really important too, and that's kind of the oral part of Charlotte Mason. So as they get older and they get into, science lessons and math lessons, even then they're orating a lot of it back to you, and they're asked to give narrations and that sort of thing, as opposed to not that you would never write a paper or anything, but a lot of it is done orally, like, tell it to me back so I know. But then there's no structure there either. Like, oh, you need to tell me, go through the plot points in a timeline that makes sense. It's just, tell me, what did you get from that?
What was your impression?
Right.
You're touching on something that is really common in the Waldorf School too. I mean, the first part of my lesson every day is recall from the day before, and using sleep, using that power of sleep, that place that we go every night to, feed our education. And our rhythm for a curriculum is kind of built it's in a 3-day rhythm, so that you're using, that sleep time.
Well, the sleep, like when things gel, when we all know if you sleep on a problem or something, you sometimes wake up and go, oh, well, there it is, or whatever it is. And even with, as teachers, the sense that the teacher takes in an image of each of the children, ideally each night, or at least frequently during the week, to go, okay, this is the image I got from the child, and then what comes in the morning, especially if you have a question. Oh, I don't know what Johnny needs. He keeps, something's there that I'm not meeting, and then hopefully we say, oh, that's when the angels will hopefully help us realize, oh, that's what it is. And it's not like you wake up and go, there, I've got it, but it might just come in the moment when you're with the child the next day going, oh, somehow intuitively you knew just what to do. And we believe very much in that sense of when you ask those questions of the spirit life, then somehow the answer comes back to you.
Yeah, and it is a little bit like you say, the gelling, or almost that process of like do every morning, bringing the impressions from the day into your sleep and then coming into the next day with just this little insight perhaps.
Yeah, I think Waldorf and Charlotte Mason both get at not trying, like, not only do, we as humans, we're spiritual, but there's something like broken about looking at everything as like these scientific pieces. So like, if you read the definition of what a horse is in a book, it'll tell you like a bunch of scientific terms and all, and might say how tall they are and how much they weigh. But if you had never seen a horse, or if you were a human being and had never seen a horse before, you still might not have a very good idea. But if you ask a child, they might give you some of that. It's about this tall, they're big, and their sound they make is silly. Like you would never read that in a book, but a child might say like that neigh that they do, or they not even know what the word neigh is, but the sound they make is really silly. And they're very soft and they make me feel safe. And just the way that a child who hasn't been kind of broken down by having to learn things in such a scientific way and spit out like exact definitions, they're treating everything around them like it's part of a spiritual space instead of just rocks. The difference between something being alive and something being dead. I feel like with the definition, we're really putting it in a box, and it's this thing here that is separate from ourselves and kind of dead. But when we're able to like characterize, what do we notice, or what do we observe, and how can we make room for other characterizations too, it has like a much more living quality. Exactly.
It's very much how we approach the sciences too, like the phenomenological sciences in upper grades.
Yeah, they want to make it their experience. So like when we get to physics in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they can seem like very simple physics elements or qualities, but they experienced it. They saw that, when we rubbed this material against that metal rod or that a different material rod, did it make static electricity or didn't it? I was watching the 6th grade the other day, and they were having so much fun. They were going, did this one make static electricity, did this one not? And then they're going, okay, so what was it? What factors do you need to have static electricity? And did it work on the day it rained? No, it probably didn't. It was too moist. So all those things that are their discovery. The teacher didn't go in and say, this is how static electricity works.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Not spoon-feeding a dead concept.
No,
right.
But that it's their living concept. So it can seem like simple stuff, but it's that aha. And I think that's a lot of what we strive for in Waldorf education, is to keep that wonder alive. Because like how you were describing how a child sees a horse, there's a lot of wonder in that. And it's how do we keep that alive for the students and make it, as much as we can, bring things experientially.
And a discovery of our reality, a discovery of the forces of magnetism, a discovery of electricity, and just what we have here in this material world.
Okay, tell us a little bit about the school, as far as if somebody's listening and they're like, I think I am interested in that. Maybe I would want to put my child in the school. What's that process like?
That would be going through our enrollment director, and we have on our website, there's a whole part on admissions, and you make an inquiry, and then our enrollment director gets back to and says, let's set up. Usually it entails coming on a tour, and then having a time for the child to visit. And in early childhood, that may be for the really young children, because our preschool program goes from 2 years old to 3.5. They're just going to have a little visiting an hour or so, and the parents are going to be there. In kindergarten, it's going to be more, stay for the morning and get a sense of the other children. And it's just a way for the teachers to get to know the child, and for the parents to go, is this the kind of program we're wanting to do? In the grades, it would be a 3-day visit, ideally, that the children have. And like, you should tell the day you had a visitor.
Yeah, I've had a visitor for the last 3 days. The first morning she showed up up in tears separating from her dad, just a brand new place, doesn't, know me. A hug from me means a little bit, but not much.
Yeah.
And then today, after her third day, lunchtime, she came to me real sad with tears in her eyes. And I offered her a hug, and she said, "I'm just so sad. I won't be at this school tomorrow." It just, she was a great fit for the class. But I would say if it piques your ears or your interest, get in touch with Katie Frost. She's our enrollment coordinator. She's incredibly warm, loving.
What
beautiful.
about cost?
That's a good question because we're a nonprofit, but we are a private school, and we don't get any state funding other than because we're a licensed daycare through the state. Parents can get help through Idaho, what's called ICCP. It's Idaho Child Care Program. And if the parents qualify for that, which helps cover costs of daycare for working families, then the state will directly pay us the money that the parent can't afford. So that's the only state money we get. Other than that, we rely on the tuition, which right now for the grades is about $10,000 for the year. Mm-hmm. We do offer tuition remission. Or not tuition remission for our employees. We offer tuition adjustments for families because we really want families to come, and we recognize, you're going, but I have 4 kids. I can't multiply that by
$40,000.
No, that's out of our means. And so we give sibling discounts, and we have what we call our TAP committee, the tuition adjustment committee, that will meet with families and go, okay, so these are our needs as an institution, and what are your needs as a family, and where can we meet? What's the place where you can afford to come, and yet we're still meeting our needs.
I like that you don't necessarily have, very Waldorfy, have a hard and fast, families that make this amount, do this. You just have a conversation, what works, what will benefit everybody. Okay, let's move forward.
And it is unfortunate that in the United States, that's how Waldorf education is unless it's a charter school, is that it does require parents to pay something to be there, because our philosophy is all are welcome, and we welcome, we'd love to offer this to everyone, and yet the reality is that we have to pay our teachers.
Right, of course.
And even with that, the tuition probably covers about 80% of our costs, and the biggest cost is for staff, and then that's where fundraising comes in. We have our annual giving campaign in the fall, and right now on Saturday we have our annual auction, and that'll be a place where if people want to come to that, or if people in the community, it's great. A lot of the items that are donated are gifts from the outer community that are saying, we want to support your school and what you're doing, and so here's a gift to auction off at the auction.
Is there a waiting list or anything to get into classrooms, or have you never? That's not an issue.
It is occasion. In our early childhood program, the limit for kindergarten is 16 students, and then there's a teacher and an assistant who are with those children. Sometimes there's a waiting list there, and in our pre-kindergarten, it's only 12 with 2 assistants and the teacher. So there's more likelihood with waiting lists there. We cap at 24 students in the grades. And so we've had, during the pandemic, we actually saw a rise in enrollment. And so a couple of our classes, like Sophie's third grade this year, and she'll be the 4th grade teacher next year, she's just gotten a few more applicants into the class, so she could be at 24 next year. And then there could possibly be a waiting list for her class.
Okay. And then what about as far as your needs as an organization? Is the building that you're in suiting your needs? Are you looking for something else? Are you expanding? Are you? Yeah.
That's a good question, because I don't know if the community is aware of it, if you're aware of it, that we've actually purchased land in Kootenai. We've got 25 acres that we purchased in 2020 on North Kootenai Road, just across from the railroad tracks as you're heading out of north from Kootenai, that we really want to move out there. We want to have a farm has always been part of the vision of our school. We haven't been able to manifest that. We have a school garden, but not the full farm with the animals. So that's the long-term vision, is to get out there. We've very much outgrown our building. The building we're in right now, just off of Pine Street, was built as the ABC daycare in the early 90s or late 80s. And it was a big building for that. And they went bankrupt, and a foundation bought the building, and then we bought it from them. And when I first moved to the school, we had lots of room, and we didn't even use the basement area at all. Yeah. And now we are maxed in space. We have our woodworking program shares space with the ed support teachers. So on the days that the woodworking is happening, the ed support teacher has to find ways to work in the classroom and can't bring individual students into that space. So we have to get creative. And there are times when you go, I need a meeting with a parent. Oh, where can I have it? It's not already being used. So.
Or like the laundry closet has been a place I've had a meeting before because we're just out of space.
Well, that's a kind of a good problem.
It is it's a very good problem to have. And we have a tent. We lease the backfield behind the YMCA because that's where we're next to the YMCA. And that gives us more recess space. And we have a tent back there that in good weather, that's a meeting space as well.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Well,
but yeah, we're getting creative. But yes, right now, that's our big fundraising need. We haven't started a full capital campaign yet. We're doing the quiet asks yet first of the bigger donors so that we can create a real firm foundation of that pyramid. And then once we've got that and we can see, yes, we can do this, then we'll open it up to the whole community to help us get to our new site and build out there.
Awesome.
I think the subject of cost is so interesting because the original initiative was funded out of industry. I mean, Waldorf Astoria was funding the first Waldorf school. And now here in the U.S., really our school, I mean, it's funded by community. It's funded by partially our tuition payments, but also by our fundraisers, by, asking grandparents and by reaching out to the community giving baskets of their offerings and really, gifts.
Yeah, and like last week, one of the neighbors who lives down the street, who's been a great supporter of us over the years, he just walks in and he's great how he does it. He goes, "Oh, I found this check on the sidewalk. I think it's for you, and it's a gift of $5,000." And you're going, "Ooh. Oh, wow!" And that's just out of the generosity of his heart. He's never had children in our school, but he believes in what we're doing.
It and believes,
So
really
we're
beautiful.
always so appreciative of the gifts. And speaking of that sense of, we were just talking about it on the way here, that picture that Rudolf Steiner had of money being alive when it's gifted. Because it's something that then moves. People can do things they couldn't do when they get the gift of something that other people have given. And that money just sits there is dead money. So you want money to have that living quality. And I feel like that's kind of what your organization is doing too, this sense of how do you help network? How do you help people raise the money they need for the nonprofits? How do you get them connected with one another? So all these gifts that we all have gifts to give. And so how do we keep that living quality of gift giving moving forward instead of stagnating?
Yeah. Well, I could have talked to you ladies probably for like another hour or two, but is there anything that we didn't hit that's like critical that you think people need to understand about your school or the Waldorf kind of philosophy generally?
Do you have...
Nothing's really bubbling up. No.
That means we covered everything.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more to say, but I feel like
I would say if people are interested to please stop by. And we do offer summer programs too. And those, I would say, I run the grades camp, and then we have our early childhood staff running the children's camp, the little children's camp, which starts for 4-year-olds. And we have almost half the children who come to those are just people from the outer community who just want a fun program for their kids over the summer. So that's a great way just to go, I want a little taste of what you dip your toes into it. Or just to have fun for the summer because you go, well, I could never afford the whole thing, but let me give them that little bit of experience. And we try to get out into the community, and like we go to the POAC's Art and Crafts Festival. We were there last year doing crafts with the kids. We want to give gifts back to the community as well. So places where we are out in the community sharing arts and crafts with children.
Yeah, if you see them and you're interested, just come say hi.
Yes, exactly. Yes, if you see us come or just stop by the school and say, I heard about you.
Yeah,
so, Thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
I think when I quiet myself, really, the only thing that's coming is just gratitude for you guys, what you do in the community, but also our school community, and then how the greater Sandpoint community supports our school. I mean, we get by teachers shoveling the sidewalk or parents cleaning the hallway, just really everybody pitching in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would say one other thing that really we consider it truly a miracle that in small Sandpoint, Idaho, in the middle of nowhere, in a sense, that we have a Waldorf school. Most Waldorf schools are in big cities. And so I feel that's a testament not only to the parents who helped create the school, but to the outer community, which has also embraced us and helped us be here and thrive.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't realize that it was like a rare thing to be in rural in a rural area either.
Because you need a population base enough to support a school, because not everyone's going to go to a Waldorf
Right,
school.
or
so.
could afford it or could whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes, it makes sense logically. But part of me feels like Waldorf is such a natural fit for rural because of the farm. If you want to do farming and just other things like that are easier to do in a rural area. But anyways, ladies, thank you for what you do, and thanks for coming on. And yeah, it's a fascinating world out there with so many education opportunities and just so many options that people have now. And I'm really grateful that you're here in Sandpoint. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. For more information, you can go to crecIdaho.com. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again soon.